Hi again. I'm sitting here in a corner of my office looking out some windows at the afternoon sky. It's still very pretty out there. Just want to take a moment to talk to you about a couple of things. One, I always like to begin these discussions with a quote from a famous writer. In this case, this writer is very famous, has sold millions of books. Even though they wrote their one and only novel in the mid-1940s, but it's been published multiple times in multiple languages and sold millions of books. It's still being read and sold today. Do you know who I'm talking about? A quote from this writer is, "I can shake off everything when I write. My sorrows disappear. My courage is reborn." You know who I'm talking about? Talking about Anne Frank. Anne Frank never had a chance to experience being an adult and writing a lot of different stories. She wrote one story, her own. It was a memoir of sorts, her experiences in the 1940s. It's a beautiful novel. I bought the unabridged edition and I read it, and then I was, pulled to read other things that other people have written about her at this time. We'll talk about those books later. But you ought to read The Diary of Anne Frank. For such a young person with no writing training whatsoever, it's a beautiful, beautifully written book. Very honest. Very often in the arts, the best art is the art that's honest. And in her case, with her book, it's very honest. She didn't know if it'd ever be published. She dreamed it would be. She had no idea. She was gone before anyone ever found it and read it. Anyway, I told you once that the first novel I wrote, I stuck it in the bottom drawer of my desk, as I had read I should do, and started on my second novel. That was smart. By the way, in those days, I wrote what's called hot pen. I could write 10 pages in an hour, 15 pages. Ridiculous, I think. And then I went to my writer friend, who's written novels and plays and been very successful, and I asked him, "Mark, how many pages do you get a day?" And he said, "Oh, I'm lucky if I get a page or page and a half, maybe 2 pages a day." I now know what Mark was talking about. The hot pen's not a bad idea. Get it all out there. Just spew it onto the paper or into your typewriter or in your tablet or wherever you're writing. Just get it out. And he did. Beautifully. Anyway, I told you that first novel I put in the bottom drawer. The second novel was probably the easiest novel I've ever written. I've published, a few books. But this one, which was the second one I wrote, but the first one I published, some tell me is the best I ever wrote. It's a memoir. It's my story as a kid growing up in a military family and traveling from one part of the world, way out in the ocean, to another part of the world, again, out in a completely different ocean. It was an experience that captured a moment in time. The United States was changing, evolving, and the novel captured some of that. This is it right here. See? And I'll talk more about it in our next video. All right, take care. Have a good evening.